swear I never saw a beard so white or gold as on the features of Grombrindle.
I hope you like those quotes. I have heard that 4 times now. But again, that's my own fault. Welcome to episode 3 of the Close Order podcast, where Lewis and I talk about any of the things we fancy to do with Warhammer. Mostly old world, but sometimes we just get a bit spicy with it, which you will see. We're going to talk about some hot dwarves, and I need you to contain yourself, but because before we get there, we have a couple of things to talk about. First of all, how are you doing today, Lewis? How are you doing?
You're making all of our listeners wait, are you, for the world's sexiest dwarves?
Absolutely, objectively ranked by two men who definitely are the authority on sexy dwarves.
100%.
But
Some might say we're a couple of episodes in, Ed, and we're already scraping the barrel for episode 90.
so this was an idea that we came up with before we recorded the first episode as a bottle episode, which is, for those of you who don't know, that's one that you can record ahead of time and then release when you need something in the pipeline, but you're too busy. Then I mentioned it to a couple of people, and the response was, yeah, I'd watch a show about sexy dwarves. So screw it. Episode 3, here we are. We are in the middle of a heat wave in Britain. I am struggling with it, not equipped for the heat at all. How are you doing in the heat?
The heat wave I don't think has reached Essex, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay.
It's been a cool 15 degrees, and
I'm very envious. Well, it's just me sweating away then, but that's fine. So hobby-wise, obviously, for those of you who have been following along, last week we released episode 1 of the Quest for the Hobby, where we'll be doing a monthly roundup of anything that any 6+ member wants to brag about or talk about in terms of their hobby. So most of what we've done over the last month is in there. Obviously, I did a video earlier in the month as well about going to my first Old World GT. Check that one out. Lots of good stuff in there. But apart from that, have you done anything since that video?
Yes, Ed. Would you now believe, I've been talking about it for weeks, the Terrorgeist is finished. She is
That's
done.
good.
She's ready to be used on the battlefield. I'm really happy how she's come out, but I think I'll save the photos in the description to our next monthly hobby roundup, so you can see her in all of her glory. Hopefully, I'll get some proper photos taken on the. I have black sheet and stuff that I take photos with for my vampire account, so I'll take some proper photos and then we can show those up. But I'm really happy with her. I've also played a game, Ed, another game played into the High Elves with the vampire accounts. So we're just playing at 1,000 points for now, whilst I'm getting everything built up. So probably not a representation of what a competitive game looks like, but we did have an absolute blast. And it was the second game in a row where the Blood Knights didn't just get shot to death on the first turn. So I got to use
That's good. Yeah.
It turns out, Ed, now this is some tactics in depth here. Turns out if you just charge Blood Knights into stuff, even on the front, they just make a mess. And nothing lives, even elves.
Well, especially elves, because they are very glass cannon. They hit hard, but they will fall over.
Yes. And the Blood Knights, because they are base initiative 4, they are faster than elves on the charge. So none of this fancy elven strike first rubbish. They're straight in, run them over, they all flee, and it's all good. So skeletons and Graveguard did nothing for the whole game. They just wandered around getting shot and being resurrected, whilst the Blood Knights basically on their own killed his whole army.
Excellent stuff. Love to hear it. As for myself, I've played one game, which was a orc nomadic horde versus troll horde. I can't remember. The two armies of infamy. Obviously, we are talking about one of those, and that's the video that's coming out tomorrow on Thursday. There will be a video where we go in depth, calling it Judging the Journal. Very similar to the Cracking the Codex from 40k. We'll go in depth on it, talk about what's good in the detachment, what the sort of magic items you might want to look at, an example army list, talk about experiences with it. But that's the game that I had. And I've also started to put together a Demon Prince, which is fun, because I bought one for wings for my...
So you're actually going to build the rest of it.
Well, yeah, I feel like I have to. I kind of don't know where I want to go hobby-wise, because I've got loads of ideas. I've got an event second weekend of June, So I don't really have enough time to do a whole. Well, I definitely don't have enough time to do a whole other army because
We're not
the
doing that
week.
again, are we? Ed?
Well, week before that I'm at a stag do, and the week before that I'm at a Teams event. So
We've learned
my
our
hobby.
lesson, haven't we, Edward?
Well, no, I do an army a week
He
for
hasn't
like
learned his lesson.
half of
Listeners,
my
he has
events.
not
What are you
learned his
talking about?
lesson.
No, it's literally just I don't have the time because I'm busy, which is a shame. So probably taking my orcs. In fact, I'm definitely taking my orcs, but I haven't quite nailed down what I want to do with that yet. But
Can we see a nomadic horde 5-0 with the orcs and goblins?
no, because I don't have the nomadic horde models to go with. That's the problem. The nice thing about playing online is you can use any models, but as soon as you're in the realm of playing in person, I'm a bit more limited. I don't know. Maybe I could whip it together in that time. It seems like a fun one to play, and it's very difficult. It's the exact opposite of the list that I've been playing up until this point. So maybe we'll give that a go. But content. What have we been up to? Now, I don't know about you. I have been a little bit busy. Since the last show came out, we have had. Yeah, I've been putting out a few things. So there was a state of play, Vampire Counts with James Ramsey. James is absolutely lovely, really knows what he's talking about, incredible player, used to play competitively in 40k, associated with Team England for many, many years. Now he is still coaching for them, but he's moved towards Old World.
Yeah.
And at the time, he'd won 2 events with his Vampire Counts. There has just been the first teams event at the square-based TSN Arena in Nottingham. And he didn't take Vampire Counts. One of his teammates was playing Vampire Counts. He took Wood Elves. But they won. They won the first teams event in Old World. So James Ramsey, I think he might be. He's very good. He's very switched on. So he's now 3 GT wins in. Very much looking forward to the fact that he's only able to go to 1 GT in June because he has other commitments. So the one that I go to, he might not be there, and there might be a different winner. Or I could just get my head caved in by him, which would be fine because he's a lovely guy, and I'd be okay with it. You learn more when you get beaten by good players. So
yes, and you learn a lot from listening to that interview as well, Ed. Actually, I thought you were a really excellent interviewer as well. I think.
Thank you very much.
You didn't fall into the trap that I think a lot of interviewers fall into, which is just to talk over the person they're supposed to be interviewing.
Yeah, so I think that's really.
Shut up! Get in your box.
I saved that for this podcast because this is like an interview, but you're not interesting. You're just here for me to bounce ideas off.
I can leave, and you can just talk sexy dwarves on your own.
I could do that. So anyone who hasn't followed us,
thing to do on the internet.
Yeah, anyone who hasn't followed us from 40k might think that we actually like each other, but no, we're nemesis is the word I'd use to describe you. But there's maybe some grudging respect there.
In the final of a GT, and my Vampire Counts are going to run you over.
Entirely possible. Vampire Counts are very, very good, but. Back to the content roundup. So, great interview with James. Thank you for saying nice things about me. But the real reason to watch that is James is incredible, very verbose. He knows exactly what he's talking about. Then I did a video on 5 tips to make the most out of your fanatics. I love fanatics. I think that you can use them very poorly. I think you can use them very well. If you want to play orcs, definitely worth a watch. If you want to play against orcs, worth a watch so you know how your opponent's going to use them. We had
worth noting that I very much enjoyed the comments under that video. Lots of people saying fanatics are already so good; they don't need any help. So very much
you can tell who plays games and who doesn't play games. Yeah. Fanatics are good; they are very good. They're not as game breaking as people think they are. They cause a lot of damage to you afterwards, and there are definitely ways to deal with them, including battle magic, which is the best lore. Hot take, best lore. Just if you can run 4 to 5 pillars of flame, you should be doing that. It is disgusting. It is. You think Terrorgeist screams bad. 5 pillar of flames is like the next big thing. I believe we're going to be seeing a lot of that coming up in the future. Then there was the Quest for the Hobby episode aforementioned. After that, it did take me a little while to get up, but there is a battle report that was my game versus Lewis. And that was the Orcs and Goblins versus Vampire Counts. It was quite early on. It was 6 or 7 weeks before now. It was recorded quite a while ago, and it takes a while to get them through, and it took me a while to get around to be honest. But you'll have to watch that one to find out who won. Apologies if there were any rules mistakes in there. I don't think there were many. I think we were pretty spot on for how early it was for you, especially because you'd only played 2 games. Yeah, absolutely. And and that brings us up to this week. So, without further ado, I think we should move on to the meat and potatoes, to the hard dwarf bread, to the Grommel great axe of the discussion. And we're going to talk about dwarves. But not just any dwarves, not your common and garden dwarves. I'm looking for a hunk of a man, a beardy, bristly boy who knows what he's about and will keep me warm in the winter. We're going to talk about some sexy dwarves.
I don't know about anyone else, but I'm turned on.
Don't say that out loud. We have got, you may have seen these before, tier lists. What good is a podcast about Warhammer if they don't dip into a tier list immediately?
We have done it differently, Oed. This
Yes.
is Old World specific one, and actually it's a dwarf specific tier list. Gone is the S tier, gone is the A tier. We've got dwarf tiers. Here we go.
A lot of the time when I see, especially 40k content, people rating things, saying this army's the best. It's all a bit subjective, and what we wanted to do was remove any subjectivity. So we have the objective truth. Whatever we put these tiers in is objective fact, and you can tell us we're wrong. In fact, do tell us we're wrong. I'll relish in being told that I'm wrong.
You love an argument in the comments, Ed. You know it.
I try not to argue with people online, but you can tell me I'm wrong and it will fuel me. So please do that. So, tiers. First tier. These are the builts. Premium dwarf. These are beards I'd like to stroke. After that, we've got Grommel cod pieces. Ooh. Next tier down. After an ale or 6.
Some of Bugman's finest.
Absolutely. Well, if they were Bugman's finest, they'd be up in the builts tier. But after that,
Bugman's finest patrons, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps. After that, we've got beardless. Now, we all know that no dwarf should be beardless. Dishonorable to be beardless, in fact. But that is where you might end up if you don't do well in our objective rating. And then finally, elf. Now, I hope we don't see anyone placed here, but in case there is anything that's so truly offensive to the eyes, we do have a category for it.
I think there are a couple of dwarves. Having looked at the list, I think there's one or two that may have shamed the dwarf race enough that they may end up in the elf tier.
I don't know if I agree with you, but that's the fun of a tier list. So we've got two very different approaches here. So I am going to be rating these dwarves purely on vibes. Lewis, do you want to tell us a little bit about your rating criteria?
Yes. So as the channel's unofficial lore master, given Ed doesn't give a shit about lore, I have done some intense, deep research in the libraries of Karaz-a-Karak and found an objective way of measuring dwarf sex appeal. Now,
Excellent.
measured in a very different way to human sex appeal. So it's not anywhere near as callous or shallow as how humans do it. So I'm going to be considering a dwarf sex appeal on 4 different categories. So the first one clearly is the beards. Okay, you'll find in a lot of these images and a lot of dwarfs in the old world have their beards tucked into their belts. So we'll be looking out for really strong beard game. Moustache, eyebrow game also feeds into that as well. So a couple of different things we get from there. Next, and this is 100% not a metaphor for penis size, but we'll be going for the axe to body size ratio. Okay, so keep it together, Ed. Come on, we can do this. We've only got like 15 of these to do. So dwarves carry impressive axes, and the more impressive the axe, clearly, the more impressive the dwarf. Thirdly, this is really serious, is the vengeance attitude or the grudge-bearing nature of the dwarf. So, as we all know, dwarves are here to avenge previous wrongs, slights against their hold or their guild. So, dwarves that are particularly vengeful or grudge-filled will score highly on this. And then, last but not least, is the category I've called Dwarven Whimsy. Now, lots of these models have really random dwarf-related things on them that didn't fit into the beards, axe, or grudge category. So I've lumped them all together because I can't be bothered to make any more categories. So that's our 4 categories: beards, axes, grudges, and dwarven whimsy. And we'll go from there.
I like it. All right, who we got up first?
So we're gonna start strong, okay? Because a lot of this guy's story feeds into all the others. And on the screen now, none other, the legendary master brewer himself, Joseph Bugman. Here he is. So, anyone that doesn't know, he runs Bugman's Brewery. It was all going well for his business until he was away for a little while, and his brewery and pub got burned down by the goblin warlord Git Guzzler. Now, Git Guzzler is going to feature on a couple of these dwarves because this is a particularly infamous goblin that's actually killed a number of the dwarves here. So, Joseph Bugman has declared a crusade of vengeance where he's laying waste to goblins across the old world, seeking out Git Guzzler and appearing wherever he's most needed.
I will just interject here before people get upset and say, "Ah, it's not an old world." Yeah, there's like 6 months of old world. There's like 40 years of fantasy.
We're kind of old minis.
We're kind of going deep on this one. You know, we've gone deep. So sorry, continue with Bugman.
No, and actually, it brings up a good point. We have limited this to dwarves that do have minis. They might be minis from 35, 40 years ago, but they will have minis. So if there are plenty of obviously loads of dwarves in the lore that I've clearly missed out, but actually if they haven't got a mini that I could find, then I've probably not included them. But yeah, so based on your vibes, Ed, your vibe check, what do you think of Joseph Bugman?
All right, I think we should alternate. So I'll go first on this one. You go first, going after that.
Yep.
So I'm thinking great beard, first of all.
Solid.
I love the beard split. Fantastic. Mustache as well. Great combination. Headwear, great. Fantastic. Yep. I love the banner behind him. Little B. You've got your BSB. Your Bugman standard bearer there. Comes equipped with a tankard.
Yes.
Very important. Not something we mentioned, but obviously dwarves do like a drink. This dwarf is
tankards in dwarven whimsy category, so I think he scores quite highly on that because his
definitely
banner
does.
is also a tankard banner as well.
Yeah.
So we've got a strong team.
Also, looking at this is a model, and given that I have a habit of painting things quite quickly because of deadlines, this is a model you could paint quite quickly. There's a lot of metal on there and a lot of beard, so that, in my mind, raises it up.
Game is strong.
Yeah. So for me, I'm thinking Topper Grommel Codpiece. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think, like you say, solid beard game. Tankard banner is exceptional, which no other dwarf has that. Tankard with He's also on his massive quest for vengeance as well, so I think he scores quite highly on that. Beard is good, but it's only a 2-strand beard, so we've got some really impressive beards coming up. So I think it's a good beard, but I think it holds him back from beards I'd like to stroke level. So I think I'd agree with that, Ed.
That's absolutely fair. All right, who we got up next?
So next up, I'll just flick it. Here we go. Grim Burlockson. Now, Grim, he was the youngest dwarf to ever pass the rituals required to become master engineer. He's got a good head on him. He is now pissing off the guild ever so slightly because he keeps doing all these undwarvish things like inventing new things or doing things by trial and error. He has, however, made himself a steam-powered gauntlet, which I think makes him look a little bit, on his left-hand side, look a little bit like a space marine. I don't know whether that's good or not, but it is a pretty powerful fist. His beard is like built into his mechanical belt, and it's a 3-strander, so good strong beard. I like that. Obviously, despite carrying all of the kit that he's carrying, also got a big pipe, and that is good. And actually, if you look at his helmet, he's got kind of a Roman style metal plume thing going on, which I think is just a good little bit of flair. And then I think behind him as well, he's walking around with like a big like factory sort of thing on his back, which I think that must earn him some dwarven whimsy points as well.
Okay.
However, he is let down by his axe. That's pretty poor axe game, I'd say. And there's no real quest for vengeance going on in his backstory either. So, don't know what your thoughts are, Ed.
Well, where would you put this chap?
I think I like the general dwarven whimsy about the model is great. The beard is good, but the axe and the just kind of the lack of vengeance really. So I think somewhere between beardless and after an ale or 6.
I think I've got to agree. If I'm looking for, if I'm rating dwarf sexiness, what I need is someone firm and reliable, someone who keeps to the traditions.
Yes.
Someone experienced. This young beardling doesn't even have a grey beard. Isn't following tradition. He's inventing new things and going by trial and error. No. It might be good enough for, those humans. Maybe you could set up a workshop in the Empire. But no. You're staying far away from my hearth and home. That's all I've got to say on the matter.
Sorry, Grim. You don't make the cut. Next up, then, we have a famous dwarf, well known, Ungrim Iron Fist. Anyone that's played the Old World video game, you'll well know Ungrim. He is one of the legendary
The Old
dwarves,
World video game.
or whatever it's called. Total War.
No, that's such a good description of it.
It's all merging into one.
It's the only reason we got Old World, let's be real. So that's a great
100%.
description.
It did well enough that they brought the models back. He is the last Slayer King of Karak Kadrin. He's you might think he's just a simple slayer, but he's actually, I think he's got a deep emotional personality, Ed, which he's torn between his duties as a king,
but
also the secret slayer oath him and his family have had to take for generations, which has been unfulfilled. Now, I won't read them off, but the list of monsters and warlords this guy has chewed his way through in his lifetime is literally incredible. And one of his favourite sayings is that, I fear there is no foe worthy of my death. So, yeah, what are your thoughts?
Oh, that's a lot of ego. And Slayers are famously trying to kill themselves via the most impressive death they can.
100%.
So for me, while I respect, this chap's storied history, again, not a grey beard, but got to put a lot of work in. Looks weirdly tall in this picture. I know he's got a big plume on the top, but the scale of that model looks a bit less stumpy than a normal dwarf, which I'm not sure I'm about.
One of the new dwarves, isn't he? So he's been newly released for the Old World, meaning he's probably actually quite big. Oh, he's demonstrating with after an ale or 6.
For me, this isn't a dwarf that I could settle down with. I couldn't see myself, forging, a clan with this dwarf.
Too unreliable, wouldn't he?
Yeah, going out to try and get himself killed, and he's going to be really grumpy when he comes back, and he hasn't managed to do that. So, in the tavern after an ale or 6, sure, but not for a lifelong commitment. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm tempted to drop him into beardless, if I'm honest. Obviously, he's earning vengeance points for being a slayer. That is, yeah. It's also the biggest axe we've seen so far, but we have only seen 3 dwarfs, so not the biggest thing to compare against.
Okay.
Beard, it's okay. Well groomed, I would say. Yeah. He's a well groomed man, which I don't know if that earns you points being a dwarf or not. And he's got fantastic plumage. We do like plumage. So maybe after an ale or 6, maybe that is fair. He's just not well placed for the dwarven whimsy category, really. He's got horns on his hat, but I don't think that's enough.
He does take himself very seriously. But maybe not in a good way. Yeah. Okay. We can. We'll leave him at the bottom of it after an ale or 6, and we can revisit if needs be.
Yeah, we'll have him as a question mark.
Absolutely. What's up next?
Next up, then, is Thoric Ironbrow. Now, he is described as the greatest living dwarf rune lord, and master rune lord of Karak Azul. Now, he is apparently as equally terrifying to his apprentices as he is to the greenskins that he likes to fight. And many young runesmiths have apparently found themselves back in the mines for not meeting his exceptional standards. So, from my perspective, he goes into battle with an anvil. Okay, I don't know how many more Dwarven Whimsy points I can give out, but straight off the bat, you're taking an anvil into battle. That's your top marks there. Perfectly respectable beard game. It's gone white. Now, Grombrindle, which we'll definitely be coming to, listeners, don't you worry. I'm going to make you wait to the end for Grombrindle. He's gone white. Now, the white dwarf, him stealing Whitebeard, could be a problem. And he does have a hammer that's impressive, but it's not massive. It does make the sound of thunder when it hits something, though, because he's got a rune inscribed on it that no one else has ever inscribed on any other weapon. So it's like a storm hammer thing. So quite cool. Just depends whether you think carrying the anvil into battle is enough of a thing to kind of make up for the fact his beard's not amazing and his hammer's not that big.
Those
How
are
much does size matter, Ed, would you say?
Well, before I weigh in, where would you put this chap?
I would go beardless, I think.
Oh, that is harsh.
You think that's too harsh?
I think that's definitely too harsh. I think, for me, I'm going above the Slayer. Now, again, not someone I could see myself, forging a clan with, sending his apprentices back to the mines. What if I bake some dwarven bread and it comes out a bit soft instead of rock hard? What happens then?
You're sleeping on the couch for
Well,
weeks, months.
yeah, if I'm lucky. Now, I haven't done a lot of interior design for dwarves, but I've never seen a dwarf sofa. I've seen dwarf benches that are made out of stone.
Yeah.
So I think for me, above the Slayer King, but not any higher.
No, exactly. He's making you sleep on the anvil, isn't he? Let's be fair.
Oh yeah.
You mess up his dinner, Ed, you're on the anvil for a night.
Well, again, probably not just a night. All right, who's up next?
Right, okay. So next up, we have Crud Mad Mattock. Now, this guy is a master machinist from the Miners Guild of Clan Thrundling. And actually, after some shenanigans, he is now the new king of Khazad Thrund. He's called his pickaxe Thunderbolt. What do you think?
I was pretty on board until he said he named his pickaxe Thunderbolt. It looks like a normal pickaxe to me. However, I'm digging it. I like the setup he's got there. It's a really nice beard. It's not styled, but it's got that sort of genuine wild man out and about vibe to it. I quite like the hat. I like the color coordination that he's got there. Turns out he's a king. That's not too bad. Yeah, I think also a bit more handsome in the face as well. Features are a little bit more well proportioned than some of the dwarves we've seen that look like they've, chased the back of one of Bugman's beer carts, and then they've suddenly stopped at an intersection. So yeah, I'm thinking I might even go up into a build.
Oh no, okay, right. We're gonna fall out here. So, couple of things, and there's only one thing that I haven't told you.
Okay.
May change your mind ever so slightly. It depends how much you fancy your personality over looks, really.
Mm.
But so the beard, whilst I agree, kind of gives him the wild man look. I very much prefer a much more groomed experience. I think that gets in the way. You get food stuck in it, that's going to make a right mess. I think. Pickaxe, it just looks a bit pathetic. I think in my mind, it's not big enough. It's got a silly name. Just a bit meh. And actually, his other name, instead of Crud Mad Mattock, is also Crud the Rebel.
Okay.
So he's become king through some very dodgy, underhand tactics, I think.
Ooh, that's not dwarfish at all.
Behavior. Obviously, we don't know what the previous king did to deserve the underhand tactics, but
still,
I think that precludes him from builds. I would suggest it puts him down to after an ale or 6.
I think I can agree with that. You kept some crucial information from me to make me look stupid, and I respect that.
You can base off looks to start with. But
no, I think
you just need some personality as well, don't you? I think looks.
Yeah.
Because how do we get past in the world?
Throwing a coup is not. I wouldn't consider that very dwarvy.
It's not.
There are rules. There are rules.
Indeed.
All right, who's next?
Okay, so we've got our first dwarf coming up here, being carried by other dwarves. So this is Ulrich Ranulfsson. So he is the king of Carrickherne, and this guy is obsessed with the customs of his ancestors. So much so that his armies, when he marches to war, contain clansmen and crossbowmen, and that's basically it. None of this newfangled technology. We're not using guns. We're not using gyrocopters. So he just focuses on the dwarven traditions. And actually, one tradition he is working his way through, and he plans to erase every single grudge in Carrickherne's Book of Grudges.
Wow. That's a driven dwarf.
That is a driven dwarf.
Where are you putting him?
So, I potentially would suggest this might be our first build, because backstory, maximum grudge points, basically to finish a grudge book would be like an amazing achievement. So the fact that he's even attempting it is brilliant. I think his beard is excellent. It looks like at least a 5-strander tucked into his belt, and ginger, which is all really strong things. His helmet has got wings on it that are bigger than him. So dwarven wings are excellent. And actually, he's also being carried by two other dwarves. And actually, in this instance, the two other dwarves, because there's only two of them and not four, like some of our other dwarven colleagues, none of them are carrying any weapons. So not only is he fighting goblins on his own, he's also defending the two dwarves that are carrying him into battle. So I think that's great points there. I think the only
I
downside that
yeah,
might stop him being a built is his axe isn't that big.
I think that's fine. I think I absolutely agree. Straight to the top.
It's not what I
I
said, really. It's just
you
how you use it.
you might think that he's swinging his axe. That's not what's happening. What's actually happening is there's a little coquettish giggle hiding behind that arm. Little bit of faux shyness there. Straight to the top of the belts for me. A dwarf that I could see myself taking home.
Excellent. I thought so. Brilliant. We have our first built then. Yeah, I'm glad you agree, but we're going to have to fight over him. Next up, then, probably my favourite dwarf story so far. This is Juggo Senseless Jorikson, and I'll tell you for why he's called Senseless. This guy is a Norse dwarf. It's a whole subset of dwarves I didn't know existed, but he's a Norse dwarf berserker. Now, he once somehow, and I think there was some running away involved. This may
Mm,
your assessment of the man, but
okay.
he once ended up in a longship stuffed full of treasure.
Okay.
Okay, so that's good. Obviously, collecting lots of gold, that's very dwarvish. We like that.
Sure.
Unfortunately, which I guess this is also probably quite dwarfish, he blew the whole lot, a whole ship full of gold
Mm-hmm.
on a massive binge drinking session. And this binge drinking session, Ed, lasted for 18 months.
Oh, wow.
So he
Okay.
drank solidly for 18 months until a whole ship's worth of gold. Can you imagine a ship that's like 100 feet long, 20 feet wide, stuffed full of gold? That's
Yeah.
a lot of alcohol.
That is a lot of alcohol. And that means that's a lot of dwarf.
That is a lot of dwarf.
I'm feeling it. Now, here's the thing. That base is very much not what I was expecting to see. That's a six-sided. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was trying to count the sides, but yeah, so I think there's 6 sides on that. It's an interesting one. I think what an incredible backstory.
yeah.
And a very wild and rugged man. I think for me, that probably puts him at the bottom of Grommel Codpiece, because I think an 18-month drinking party, not a dwarf that I'd want to be, tied to eternally, because drinking's all well and fun, when you're a young dwarf in your first few hundreds, but when you're a bit older and you want to settle down, it's hard to maintain. But yeah, 18-month drinking party is incredible.
I wonder if it was during the 18-month drinking party that he decided to dye his beard and hair blue.
Absolutely. The first time I had absinthe, I woke up in the morning with a mohawk, so I can fully see this happening.
That's how I ended up with no hair, Ed.
How about yourself?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. The only thing that disappoints me slightly, his axe is a bit small. I don't think I'd feel it.
I think that's a sign of the times. It was a second edition model, I believe. So if we had a more modern representation, I think we'd get a bigger axe.
He'd have a bigger axe. Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy with Gromrule Codpiece. I can take that. Yeah, no, I think we can do that. That's fine. Next up, then, here we go. Our first and only female dwarf. Control yourself, Ed. This is Helgar Longplatz. She is the queen of Crag Bryn. Now, it's a coastal dwarven hold. So she has lots of dealings with the elves. She even trades with the elves, which is immediately a downside.
Yeah.
However, she was invaded by another dwarven hold, being led by a man called Drong the Hard. Now, she successfully fought off Drong the Hard,
Okay.
but then decided to marry the guy. So, this would be breaking up a relationship. Now, a lot of these other dwarves are married, but it is actually mentioned in her backstory as a specific thing that happened. They had the big fight and then got married. So, pretty legendary stuff.
Well, where would you put her?
So, beard-wise, obviously female, so has no beard, which is contrary to popular dwarf belief for those of you that follow Lord of the Rings. So I don't think we should judge her on beard, because that's not fair. Axe is cool. I like it. good shaft on that axe, and a good head as well. She's got a nice gemstone on her helmet. Control his little head. Got a good gemstone on her helmet, which I quite like. A bit of pizzazz going on there. I like the red and the blue on the shield as well.
Yeah.
Pretty badass as a female dwarf to run a hold on her
Mhm.
own and fight off another whole dwarven hold. But the trading with elves, I think, holds her back. So I'm torn between beardless and after an ale or 6.
Well, I'm going to insist that it's beardless,
Yeah.
for she has no beard.
She has no beard. It would be rude not to put her in the beardless category then, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. So, nice, easy one there. Beardless, unfortunately. What are we moving on to?
Okay. We're moving on to a chunky lad. This is Bazrak Bolgun. So he is a brewmaster, worked with Joseph Bugman, veteran of the Goblin Wars, but unfortunately was killed by that bastard Git Guzzler when he burned down Bugman's brewery. What do you reckon?
So immediately, this is a beefy hunk of dwarf.
It is.
I'm on board
It'll
immediately.
keep you fed, this would.
Yeah, and well aled, as you can see, carrying barrels of ale. So Bugman was up at the top because he had a tankard and a tankard on a standard. This chap has on his back a gun, in his hands booze. So he's got his priorities all figured out. So good start. Loving the hair. The hair, the top knot combo, very strong beard and mustache
Probably
combination
my favourite
there.
moustache out of all the dwarves we're going to look at. I think
Absolutely.
that is a solid moustache.
Yeah. I'm a sucker for an apron. Used to work in hospitality, wore one of those quite a lot. So man and apron, great stuff there. Looks like a fairly decent axe. I'm thinking for me, this is a Grommill codpiece.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Unless you think too deeply about what the stains are on that apron. If that puts you off, that might
It'll
No,
just
you're
be,
fine.
spills from behind the bar. It's fine. Or goblin blood. Either of those are acceptable.
Nope, solid dwarf. I fully agree with that.
Yeah. I think we might be about to take a bit of a right turn here. Who we got next?
Here we go. Right. This one I'm worried about, I'm afraid. So this is Cazador Thunderhorn. He is the dwarf king of Karakazul. He's been described as massive, strong by even dwarf standards, and he once lifted a fully laden ore pony, which stumbled and became trapped in a crevasse. So he lifted up a horse and a carriage, basically, all on his own.
Yeah.
So straight off the bat, that sounds positive. He's got a strong beard, so 5-strander. It's a good beard, good solid moustache as well. The winged hat, I love the winged hat.
I'm not a fan of the mustache,
Don't like the moustache?
No, there's something about it.
It's a bit English professor style, isn't it?
It's a bit unkempt compared to the rest of his appearance, and I'm
Yes.
not about that. He needs to
Okay,
make up his
you
mind.
lose some points on the moustache. So the two things that put me off. First, this guy's supposed to be the strongest dwarf in the world ever. That hammer, frankly, is pathetic.
Yeah.
You might as well just not even bother. Like, you can fit that in your sock. So that's just rubbish, I think. I thought it would be bigger, which is not the first time I've heard that.
Something dwarf.
something penis joke. The banner as well. Now, golden banner, blue flag. I've seen a certain unit of high elf spearmen that have a banner that looks remarkably similar to this, Ed. Obviously, been replaced with a horn and an axe, but even the axe on the banner looks pretty pathetic. Little gold trim on it as well. I think that banner's elven.
That's a strong accusation to make. Have you got any backstory evidence of this, or is this all just conjecture?
No, backstory says he's a big dwarf.
Purely on vibes.
Pure vibes. I'm
out.
At that, and I'm thinking elf.
Yeah, get out. Get out.
I think take the banner away. I think he's a solid after an ale or 6. But the minute
Sure.
you start emanating those filthy elves, I think we're in danger zone at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Who we got up next?
Right, we're going with the banner theme. This banner I think is better because it's not that silly blue color. Crag the Grim. He's the Master Rune Lord of Karazakarak, so very famous dwarf hold. He's the oldest living runesmith. He's almost 1,800 years old, so he's an old boy. His expression has been described as an expression of eternal disapproval, which is, Ed, how I would describe my parents' impression when I said that I was going to play with my toy soldiers instead of football. So
Oh,
I
it's too
recognise the
real.
face. What do you think?
I purely on vibes. Again, not feeling it. I
No,
don't love the banner. I feel like the hammer's fine. If
Hammer's
you
fine.
know, if we're giving Mr. Bluebeard up there a little bit of leeway because he's a second-hand miniature,
Yeah,
this one can't be too far from that.
yeah.
The hammer's fine, but that looks worryingly like some sort of wizard's stave,
It does, doesn't it?
and
And it
I'm
is a
not
rune
on.
lord,
Oh
so
yeah, but
you play around with some kind of magic-y stuff.
yeah, but that looks like a wizard's stave, and I'm not about that. I want him to have made his own, you know, rune forged instruments of. I think this is low for me. I'm tempted to be like here.
Yeah, I would have said beard. I think the beard saves him from being an elf. I think it's a single
Sure.
strander, but it is his entire chest is beard, and then that moustache. I think that's an impressive moustache. If you can tuck your moustache into your belt, I think you're on different trajectory there. So I think that just drags him up from elf to beardless.
Yeah, I'm quite underwhelmed by the beard mustache combo. It feels to me like not very much effort is put into that appearance. So
I'd
he's just
encourage you to tell him that and see what happens.
what's he gonna do? Bite my kneecaps. Uh, moving on. Who else have we got?
Right. Next up, a man that needs no introduction. If you
And
don't
yet you're
know,
gonna give one.
I am going to give one. Obviously, doesn't need it, but we will give it. This is Gotrek Gurnason. So if you don't know who he is, you need to read a little-known series of books called Gotrek and Felix, and you'll soon find out what this guy's about. Now, clearly a Slayer. I think strong Slayer beard, so big ginger kind of plaited strands on him
Mm.
either side of the. They're basically, from what I can tell from the photo, the plaited bits are his sideburns, which I think is when you can tuck your sideburns into your belt. I think you're onto a winner there. He's obviously on his constant quest for vengeance, so he gets some grudge points in the grudge category there. I think his axe is quite impressive, especially when you consider axe to body size ratio is good, and I think it's extra impressive when you realise he's actually chained the axe to his face. So axe and
Oh.
face are connected. He does suffer ever so slightly from the fact that he is a slayer, so he doesn't have that ostentation that would give him dwarf whimsy points. But I think when you chain an axe to your face, I think that might give you some of those points to push him up near the top of the tier list, I'd say.
Where do you want him?
I think there's an argument that he could be built, but I think realistically, if we're going to be proper, I think Gromril Codpiece, I think, is where he's at.
I could see him here. I think I was on board. He's also the least clothed dwarf we've had so far, so that earns points in my book. But he's got an axe chained to his face. Now, I'm here for a dwarf, and I want to have all aspects of dwarving.
Yeah.
I want forging. I want baking the dwarven bread. I want to go out and slay some goblins. But I also want to come home to the hearth, you know? And in the middle of the night, the last thing I want is for my dwarf husband to roll over and to accidentally cut off a limb with his axe. I'm not about that.
Inconvenient.
It would be. It would be. For me, I'd probably go down to after a nail or two, but I think I can compromise with lower down in the codpiece tier.
Yeah. I think you would have what I think probably just tips him up into Gromril Codpiece is the man's history. I think there's prestige attached by saying you have wedded Gotrek. I think you said that. I think there's prestige attached to your name and your household that will last forever into the generations. So I think that just pushes him up a category.
All right. Who's up next?
Okay. Next up, we have Skeggy. Now, this is a fine representation of a dwarf. Skeggy Threxon, companion of Joseph Bugman, hailing from Skegness on the east coast of England. Unfortunately, another dwarf that has been slain by that bastard Git Guzzler.
He got around, he did.
What do you reckon?
He's only got one eye. So he's less likely to see the bullshit I'm up to. I believe that's a pipe coming out of the right side of his mouth as well.
It is.
This is strong dwarf energy for me. I could see probably halfway up in the Gromel Cod piece for me. How about yourself? What are you thinking?
I think so. The axe is bigger than him. Check. Axe is chained to his
Yes,
arm. Check.
but
Impressive
not
beard.
face, which is good.
Yeah, not the face. So we've got a good. The axe is he's not letting go of the axe, but he's also not licking it. Um, Impressive beard. Check. Massive grey eyebrows. Eyebrow.
Mm,
Check. Eye patch. I think is a good touch. Smoking a pipe, as you say. Carrying a beer into battle. I think that gets him on the Gromrel cod piece.
yeah, and I've just noticed the shield slung over his right arm.
Yeah.
This is a dwarf who's prepared. So yeah,
And
yeah,
you can
absolutely.
see from that how he's prioritized. So the axe and the shield are both on the same arm, meaning he can't hold both at the same time. But he has prioritized the beer in the other arm. So
Mm.
regardless of whether he's on attack or defense, he's still drinking, which I think.
If this was a younger dwarf, you'd feel like it was foolishness. But a dwarf doesn't get to this age without being able to look after himself while also holding a beer at all times. So I respect
Perhaps if he'd have put the beer down and had his shield, he wouldn't have been killed by that stupid goblin. So there we are.
it. That's true.
Here we go. We're almost near the end now. Couple to go. This is Grim Grunson. So Grim is a common name. This guy's dwarf engineer and boatman. Okay, he was actually kicked out of the Engineers Guild for his odd habits, which included drinking engine oil and, fundamentally, which I think might push him down, having the audacity to try and build boats out of wood. Wood,
Ugh.
wood.
No. So not a chance. The beard.
Average, I'd say the beard. It's wide.
Yeah,
But reach
it's
about.
not great. Telescope definitely looking through the wrong end.
Yeah,
If we
looking for
just
the wrong end of the telescope.
we just look at that, holding a flintlock wooden pistol. Yes, I'm not about it. For me, it's not an elf, but he's at the bottom of beardless.
I think what might put him down to elf is the fact that nowhere on his pursing is he carrying an axe.
Oh, in the bin, right at the bottom. I'm glad you pointed that out. I hadn't realised. This is not. I couldn't bring this dwarf home to my mother.
No.
There'd be
What
looks.
reputable dwarf doesn't use an axe?
No, my friends and I would be out for mead, and there'd be looks, there'd be whispering, there'd be comments. This is not a dwarf that I could spend the rest of my life with.
Yeah. Everyone would just constantly ask you, "Are you sure?"
Yeah.
The question you don't want to be asked all the time, is it?
Is he actually a dwarf? Or just a very, very small human? Who
Right,
else we got?
swiftly on then. This is Durzak Dragonback. He was, in fact, he has passed away. He was the warden of Bugman's Brewery.
Okay.
So he was ultimately responsible for looking after it whilst Bugman was away. And he was the person who was looking after the brewery when that bastard Kit Cutler turned up and burned the whole place down. So, in my opinion, Ed, being responsible for losing Bugman's Brewery is pretty irrecoverable.
Yeah.
Does not make for an attractive dwarf. Now, in his favour, I will say, he does have a hat that is literally just a dragon perched on his head. So that's quite whimsical if we want to points. The standard he's holding is so big it doesn't even fit on the screen. It's actually like 4 times the size of him. So more whimsy points. And his beard, 13 strands I counted. That's a 13-strand beard, Ed.
Did you go through any phases when you were a teenager that you might now be ashamed of? You don't have to tell me what they are, but did you have anything like that?
No comment.
Yeah, this dwarf to me feels like someone who never left that phase. This is a dwarf that's trying too hard. And don't get me wrong, dwarves, I like a man who can try hard. But I don't want it to look like you're trying hard.
Yes.
I want it to be
Feels right.
effortless in how impressive you are.
100%.
13 individual beards. I don't want to call them strands. What's a better word for it?
I couldn't think of a better word.
Beard tails we'll go with. 13 beard tails. That is, I think that might be about 6 too many.
Yeah.
It's hard to go that high. And the hat, it's not for me. Obviously, famously, dwarves and dragons don't get along well. Both love both love gold. So not sure I'd want to associate with a dwarf who's got such poor judgment as to remind you of the dangers of a dragon. And then, as you say, very, very poor.
Poor record. I can't get over
Yeah.
the loss of Bugman's Brewery, to be honest, my man. I think he's on Elf. I put him
Oh,
on Elf.
Alpha. Okay, I can
I think
get behind that.
any dwarf responsible for the destruction of that brewery, I think, should hang his head in shame. But there we are. Right, here we go. We're going to the business end now. None other than Thor Grimbrudge Bearer.
Oof.
So he's the High King of all the dwarves. Needs no further introduction. The drip of a dwarf. Good, keep it going, keep it going. Having 4 other dwarves carrying you around at all times. If that doesn't say dwarven whimsy, I don't know what does. Even more impressively, that those dwarves are carrying around, they also have hammers.
Yeah.
So one-handed are carrying Thorgrim around. I think that gives Thorgrim some extra points. He's got a big axe, solid beard, and what I think also puts him up near the top is the fact he's carrying with him into battle literally the actual Damaskron. The Book of Grudges itself is on his little throne.
First of all, really impressive. Love it when I see a dwarf who can read. Everyone can read, but not all dwarves do read. You know, so sometimes they're too busy. You know, down in the mines or ranging out in the wilds, looking out for those goblins. And sometimes, you find a dwarf who hasn't read a scroll in many a moon. But this is a dwarf who's reading all of the time. This is an intellectual dwarf. But he's not just intellectual. Look at those hands. Those are massive gauntlets. This dwarf can look after himself. And we're a little zoomed out.
Well, I think.
But that is an impressive mustache beard combo. I think there's very little that needs to be said. I'm putting him up in a built, but not quite at the top for me. I think second place.
So, here we go. The penultimate dwarf.
Mm.
The man himself, none other than Grombrindle. We introduced him at the start. Here he is. He's literally in this mini. He's being carried by Gottrex himself and Joseph Bugman, who both scored very well on their respective scores. His beard, identifiable from a mile off. It's an acceptable white beard. I think he's the one dwarf that can carry off the white beard. The axe is bigger than his head, which is always good. And he's still great. He still runs a magazine in 2004. He's like 500 episodes into this magazine. Like,
here's the thing: print media is dead. So I don't know if I'm going to follow you on that one. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I rate the White Dwarf as highly as you might. Where are you thinking?
I am of the opinion that I don't want to be murdered in my sleep, so I think if we don't put him in builds, I think our YouTubers, comment people, might find us and murder us. So I give in to fear or not, Ed?
No, never give in to fear. I thrive on adversity with specifically our subscribers. I think for me, it's top of Gromwell Codpiece. I think he's good, but he's not great. He's got to be so busy as well, always writing those magazines, and
always traveling around the place.
A little bit full of himself. How many different looks has he had over the years? This is a dwarf. This isn't a steady dwarf. This is a dwarf who changes at the whims and of the times. I've seen this dwarf with tech in his beard, and
I've seen him as well talk about things from the 40,000th year in the future. He talks about demons and Tau.
That's a dwarf that's deep in his cups. I'm not sure that this dwarf's fully all there. So out of respect, I think Gromwell Codpiece, but I can't go any higher.
Okay, no, I think respect gets him to that point, and hopefully we won't be killed by our subscribers. So there we go. He can go there. And now we have one more. It's an honorary mention, really. It's the Grudge Pony. Yes. So she came in the Battle for Skull Pass. It's a pony carrying a box full of grudges. So, I mean, you're immediately scoring max points on the Grudge Vengeance category, because that's literally its whole job, is to carry grudges around. I think someone bringing a pony into battle gets max points on Dwarven Whimsy as well. Only thing that lets it down: no axe and no beard. Well, I might have a
Yeah.
pony beard, but I don't know if we can call that a beard.
So I'm going to insist that it goes here at the top of beardless, and that's because we are rating the sexiest dwarves, and you know, dwarves I can get behind and under and on top of, but a pony. I've got no attraction to animals,
That's
I'm
where your
afraid.
line is it?
Yeah, yeah.
You'll go for
Well,
half.
weirdly, the line is pretty. That's pretty far past the line. Animals. So, it's no disrespect to the pony, the Grudge pony. Fantastic model, great history, but doesn't rank for me as a sexy dwarf.
No, fair enough. I'll let you off. You'll have a dwarf that's got an axe chained to his face, but you won't have a pony. So we know
Well,
where Ed's line is now. So we
I
can get
actually didn't
information
want the
pretty soon.
axe changed to the face. I put him that high because you were quite taken, I believe. But
Well, a bit of excitement, doesn't it? You never know what's going to happen.
oh yeah. It's not the excitement I'm looking for in my life. Perfect. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I had an absolute blast. And if you've got any thoughts as to where these dwarves ranked in our clearly objective rankings, this is factual rankings.
The truth.
If you disagree, you're wrong. If you disagree, let us know in a comment below.
Who was our favourite again? Sorry, Ed.
So just to quickly go back, favourite, we had the chap there with the ginger beard on the shield.
So we had two people being carried. So that was Thorgrim Brudgebearer
Mm.
and what's his face, Ulrich Ranulfsson. So we really what we want is we want multiple dwarves. That seems to be the theme.
I think you're onto something there. And for me, a coquettish giggle behind an arm as you hold an axe. That does it for me.
Right, it's time to go to bed, I think.
Perfect. Thank you again for watching. This has been episode 3. Do all the things. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. Still growing the channel. Only about 20% of the viewers currently are subscribed because we've only been around for a few weeks. So if you'd like to see more, some sensible stuff, some silly stuff, some hobby stuff, we have it all here. The Old World Plus Plus. Thanks for watching.